Hello, Ken. How are you this evening?
I'm filled with the love and the joy of life, Dan. How are you?
That is an excellent answer. So, the cool thing is, even though it is dark outside, we just gained an hour. We went 1 hour into the future and we've arrived. It is 2021 daylight savings time. But here's the sad news where you live, they
Yes.
don't even do that, do they?
No, we actually respect the time and just allow it to be. We don't manipulate
Let
it
time
like the
be.
rest of the
Oh,
country.
cool. Yeah. So we, like my favorite movie, Back to the Future, we travel back in time and then we travel into the future. We just jump
Yes.
all over the place every year. We travel through time twice a year. That's how cool we are in every
Yeah.
other part of the country except for Arizona.
And Arizona stays firmly grounded in reality. You're
That's right.
welcome. You're welcome, America.
Yes. So tonight we are
Yes,
talking
Dan.
about breakups. And these are breakups, both breaking up from a company or a client or breaking up with a friend, like ending a friendship or stop hanging out with a person, and just breaking up from a relationship that you're in. So why don't you just comment on this topic and then we'll just jump in and keep going. Go ahead, Ken.
Sure. Sure. So I think this past year has been a big reality check in a lot of ways for a lot of people, and an opportunity. We're going to take one single slice of this, the whole notion of breakups, which I think relates back to the concept of trust. And during a time of like heightened emotion and a time of um, heightened focus, and a time when a lot of people were sequestered in their homes, there's a lot of time for reflection. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing from my clients is how they've had an opportunity, and this is both on a corporate level and an individual level, to really examine what they're doing as a company, to examine what they're doing as individuals within a company. And then to extend it on a personal level, oftentimes those coaching conversations that are business related extend into the realm of the personal, and people talking about taking a serious look at what they're doing on a personal level as well. And in a lot of cases, people, particularly those with families, are making new choices. One of the examples, and I think we've talked about this before, one of the choices that some people are making is to spend more quality time with the family, and to recognize that out of this whole experience of working from home, as challenging as it may have been, there was an opportunity to, if you will, break up with nonstop work. There was an opportunity to actually carve out family time. There was an opportunity to say, I'm going to shut things off now, and to break up with that workaholism, and to really focus on the stuff that mattered. And I think, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to people who were sick with COVID or to those who lost people to the disease, but when confronted with something that serious, I think people had an opportunity to take stock of what matters most and what counts in life, and to look at the things that were hindering them from actually being able to engage that. And for a lot of people, that was their family, whether it was their kids or spending more time, if you're, an adult, with your parents who might be elderly, spending more time with friends instead of making up excuses, focusing on those things that you wanted to do, and breaking up with those things that were hindering your ability to do it, and recognizing, Dan, you actually had the power to do that, that you could be cause for your life in that way.
So I like the angle you went with that. And now you need to break up with your phone that goes off in the middle of you speaking. Anyway, so no, I really do like that angle, like breaking up with things that maybe you're doing too much of or holding you back. I think that's really good. Um, I would think of that song. They say breaking up is hard to do. I think it's a really old song, but um, I think that the biggest thing, despite what area in life you're breaking up with, I think the hardest part for people in today's culture is to face a breakup head on, to like have a real and open, honest conversation about uh, the two people in a relationship. We need to break up, or to go to that boss and say, I'm leaving here, right? Or to talk to that friend and say, yeah, we're probably not good for each other. We're not making each other better people. So I think what tends to, that I see as the biggest challenge with a breakup is people avoiding it, right? In two ways: either avoiding it by sticking around longer after they know it's over, like they've mentally given up. They're like, I should not be around this person anymore. This relationship isn't going well. This job is not for me. And just because they fear facing it head on, they just linger and stick around. And I think if they look back, they'd be like, wow, what a waste of time. If I just dealt with it, that would have been a much better approach than the way I handle the breakup, which is just kind of make it so bad that maybe the other person would come up with the idea and they'd be like, oh, good, weight off my shoulders. I didn't have to say a word. Maybe I just made it so bad that they fired me, or they broke up with me, or they just stopped hanging out with me. And then the other way that I see people not facing it head on is a modern term called ghosting, right? So you'll see people. My brother told me this story. So he's a manager in a company where he's constantly hiring people, and he'll have a great interview and go through all the steps, and then basically make them an offer, and they'll accept the offer, and then they'll be checking in to fill out paperwork and keep going. The person's gone, as if they didn't just go through an interview process. They clearly changed their mind, or took another job, or decided to do something else. But instead of just saying, hey, Ken, thank you so much for the opportunity, but I decided to go in a different direction, or as I thought about it more, I decided not to go forward. And even though I accepted the offer verbally, I'm not going to go forward with this company. They just ghost them, just disappear, as if, where is that person? What's going on? And they go so far as to like block people's number, or like send that email to spam, and do all these things. So they just can't face it at all. And you see that exact same thing probably more commonly in relationships. The number of times my clients have told me, or my friends have told me, who are out in the dating world, will say, oh my gosh, I met this person, it was awesome. Or they had a first date and it went so well, right? Or I've been seeing a person for a while, and then they're already planning, like, let's get together this other time, let's do this again, da da da, whatever. And then what the heck happened to this person, right? They block them, they just don't answer, they ignore, whatever, ghost them. And then because they can't just break up and face it head on. So that's where I'm going to start with. I think the biggest challenge of breaking up is it's hard to do because we're not willing to face it head on.
Well, I think we're not willing to face it head on. And I think there's something else at play there. And that's a notion of having critical conversations, the notion of actually having conversations of substance. That is a challenge. And one of the things that I coach on with communication is it is the most difficult thing to do, to simply say what's so, just to deal with what's there. Oftentimes we will soften things and discount them. You know, it's not so bad. It's not you, it's me. We make up excuses. And other times we overreact with anger. And yet the hardest conversation to have are those really simple words that you just said, like, I don't feel this is making us better people. I don't feel like this is the right place for me to be. My heart's not in this job. I'm not contributing as much as I could be, and I'm not getting from it what I need. Those are really hard conversations to have, and we don't train people anymore to have conversations like that. And if we look at the social media world, which is consuming us, we see how people communicate. They communicate with a nasty tweet. They communicate, in big quotes, by ghosting people and simply not responding. They communicate by starting campaigns against people that can wreck someone. But having conversations that are as clean as the ones you described, this isn't working, in our relationship. This isn't working in my work relationship. Those are the conversations that people are A, not skilled in having, and B, terrified to have. And I think the terror comes from the not knowing. What will happen if I'm vulnerable and I just say what's so? What will happen if I actually say to my spouse, I can't do this anymore? What would happen if I said to my boss, I want to navigate a smooth landing here, but I'll work with you over the next few months, but this job isn't right for me anymore. What will happen then? It's that fear of the unknown and the lack of skill and training, and frankly, the lack of examples of how one has those conversations that tend to stand in our way.
As Tony Robbins says, kill the monster while it's little. And all he means by that is we can build stuff up in our head and make it a lot bigger than it is. But if we just deal with it early, then it doesn't become this huge monster that we're like, fear so big, right? It's a lot smaller fear in the early stages. So when you get that inkling or you get that feeling, oh, something's not right, or I need to do it. If you just address it then, if you just confront it then, it's a small monster. You can kill the monster while it's little and not let it grow to something because you held off or wasted time with it. But I have my number one piece of advice for preventing breakups. Never commit to anything. Now, that's not what I really mean. But what I really mean is have high standards. And so whether we're talking about high standards for a relationship, like a friend relationship or a romantic relationship, or for even a job, I think it's as simple as this. Pick three things and call them your A's, your absolutes. These are the must-haves. And I can make them really easy for people. I said this to one of my children the other day. I said, I would say there's two things that probably there should be an alignment of these two things for a person you'd be in a relationship with. And they should be religion and politics. If you both are the same religion and you both have the same political viewpoint, right? Then you probably could have a pretty good communication and move forward really well. But if you don't align on that, you probably have a lot of other things that kind of stem off from that you'll disagree on. So anyway, I think it doesn't matter what your thing is, just have standards, right? Like figure out if I just had 3 rules for a job, the job must do this and have this or be here or do whatever. To come up with your 3 things and say, I don't even consider jobs that don't meet my absolutes. I have to have these 3 things. Then you'll never be in a job, never, that's an extreme statement. It's less like you'll be in a job that will disappoint you later, that you'll be really disappointed with if you start out by saying, I only consider jobs that meet my standards. I only get in relationships or consider a relationship that with a person that aligns with me in these 3 areas, right? Or a friend, there has to be some, they always say, you become like your peer group or the people you spend the most time with tends to be how you kind of mold your life to fit in with that group. So wouldn't it make sense that you find people who are like-minded people or people of the same level of ethics or morals or standards as you? So my biggest advice to never have breakups is to start with high standards, keep it to 3, and make sure you don't ever violate your standard by choosing people and jobs that make sure that you have a better success rate.
So I'm going to agree with you on part of it, and I'm going to offer a different perspective on another part. So the place where I agree is the high ethics and standards. It's like, you know what? I'm not going to hang out with people for whom cheating on their taxes, whatever it happens to be, like outwardly cheating on their taxes. No, I don't want to brag about that. It's like, I want every deduction I can get, but I don't want to skirt the law. I don't want to hang out with people who make fun of others because they're different. It's like, no, I want people who treat others with respect. So yeah, absolutely. Pick 3 things, and same thing for jobs. I want to work for a company that strives to promote from within, or that strives to use local products and local services and really builds up the community. Those are, I think, great pieces of advice. I wrote a blog for the Episcopal Church Foundation a couple of weeks ago called Religion and Politics. And it was about the fact that what I alluded to earlier, that That was one of the earliest pieces of advice I heard from my parents, which was never discuss religion and politics. We don't do that in polite company, right? And yet, I think it was the worst advice they ever gave me, because what I wish they would have said was, here's how to discuss religion and politics in a way that's respectful and a way that's compassionate. That's what I would have loved to have heard. And, even within religious bodies that you might think are homogenous, within a particular church denomination, you're going to find a huge spread of ideas. And the ability to have a conversation in a way that's rational and polite and compassionate and loving is so important. So, yeah, set your standards high, absolutely. But I would add to that, learn how to have a conversation in a way that doesn't attack someone personally, and in which you can separate yourself from the conversation that's being had, so that you don't take things as a personal attack, but rather as an exchange of ideas from which both people have an opportunity to grow.
So in my most recent book, I took this from somebody, but I promote the concept of slow to hire, quick to fire. And so that aligns well with my last statement about having these standards and trying to prevent breakups. I think if you're more scrutinizing on the front end, like you're slow to commit, right? Slow to take that job, or maybe you accept a trial period as part of the job, right? Or something. It's like, let me make sure this is the right choice for me. Let me go through a trial period, and then I'll, sign an agreement or commit to it or whatever. Before you move in with somebody, right? Like, spend the time making sure that they're in alignment. There's a fit there before you commit to the vacation with this friend. Make sure there's going to not be some craziness on this vacation. So, be slow, be scrutinizing, have that high standard in the beginning, but then be quick to fire, meaning be quick to break up. Because my first book, I said, trust your instincts, like trust your gut, because I'm telling you, it's that conscience. It's the part of your brain that's done its job over all these years of learning from past experiences, and throws up the red flag and says, ooh, that's concerning to me. That's an issue for me. And when that inkling or that conscience pops up and says, ooh, that's concerning to me, don't be slow on that. Be quick to evaluate and try to get to the bottom of it and find out what's going on. And if you discover it is concerning and it violates those early standards you had, I say be quick to fire. In this case, be quick to break up. Literally, don't linger like I said people do. Be the kind of person who says, nope, there's no failure in this. One of the most common pushbacks that I get as a coach is when somebody's telling me something, and I always respectfully ask the question, would you like to hear my perspective, or could I offer my opinion on this? And of course, they're like, yes, that's why I pay you as my coach. And I say, I think that you should, whatever, quit that job. And the pushback I get is people say, I'm not a quitter, right? And I'm like, it's interesting because we have all these cliches, and more than one cliche can both be true, right? Like, you don't want to be a quitter. You want to be someone who gives up on things too quickly. You want to hold true to your commitments. All of those things are good as just like a bumper sticker or a true general statement. But in the advice I'm giving today, I'm saying be quick to fire, be quick to quit, be quick to break up. Because when you know it's not right, it's like the definition of insanity. Do you really expect it to be better when you keep going to the same place? Businesses aren't likely to change. People aren't likely to change without a lot of concerted effort. So don't wait as if something's going to get better, because it probably won't. It'll probably just grow to be a bigger monster. So be quick to break up.
So I think it goes to the notion of like fail fast, right? And failure has this horribly negative connotation. And yet failure is actually our roadmap to success. It's like if I'm failing a bunch of times because I'm trying new and different things in order to get to a particular end result, that's actually a good thing. I'm ruling things out. Years and years ago, I worked in an ER, and I remember the first time I saw RO, MI, rule out myocardial infarction. It's like rule out a heart attack. It's like, there's a whole protocol for how to prove that that wasn't happening. You wanted to rule it out. And so in a lot of ways you do tests, and if they failed or passed the test, that would guide you on the roadmap towards making that diagnosis. And so I think about that notion of failing fast when you talk about the fire quickly, but or excuse me, about be quick to break up. But I also think about the fact that we have to destigmatize that it doesn't mean that you've quit on something. It means that you've made a reasoned choice after intelligent consideration about what's going to be best for you and the person or the company that you're with. And so it would be irresponsible and inconsiderate not to have that breakup happen. Second thing I thought about was years ago when I was in high school, I lived and worked in Europe. And I was so taken by the fact that they were not quick to declare friendship. And in fact, that in most European languages, in French and German, in Spanish, there's informal and formal ways of saying you. And one always begins, except for like peers, little kids will call each other in the informal. But for adults, you always start with the formal address. And when you get to a particular point in the relationship, one or the other person says, is it okay if we, use the informal with each other? And that's a sign of like your friendship's actually progressing. It's kind of a uniquely American thing that like you meet somebody and instantly we're friends. Instantly we're bought in. Instantly, we're on board. And to go with what you were saying earlier, have those high standards and take your time. Take your time to evaluate if that person or that company that you want to join, or that person that you went out and maybe met once, had dinner with once with some friends, is somebody that you really want to invite into your inner circle. Take a more European approach where you actually take time before you make a declaration of friendship, and allow yourself to get to know that person, to get to know that company before you step into it, and to evaluate them against the criteria that you have. They fail or they don't. And then be honest with yourself about that and make a reasoned choice based on the data.
So there was a movie with George Clooney years back called Up in the Air. And it was about how he traveled around to companies, and his job was to lay off people, basically fire people. And I always said I could do that job. I could do that job. And I don't know what that says about me, except for that I'm okay with confrontation. But one of the things I liked about the way that they let people go was they just were matter of fact about it, right? There was no long dialogue. There was no like excuses or made up reasons. It was basically like, Ken, today is going to be your last day here at the company. There's blah, blah, blah. It's like right to the point, right? And if people were like, why? There was like, we have a whole packet, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of the chase. You could say that's very unemotional, but in my experience, I always say this: liars lie specifically. And so when you hear an answer to a question, it's a bunch of detail. Usually some of those details were added in or made up, right? To try to justify or explain something that they're trying to cover up in a situation. So I think my scripting for you is when you're going to break up with, like you're going to quit a job, break up in a relationship, or end a friendship, is just be matter of fact, literally, because you don't do anybody any favors, one, by making up reasons that aren't the actual reasons. If they actually ask you and you are so inclined, I think you could offer constructive feedback, but be prepared, because the moment you do that, you're going to get a lot of defensiveness and a lot of pushback. So I think the easiest thing is, remember the movie Jerry Maguire, and the guy goes, came here to let you go, Jerry. And I was like, oh, that's right to the point. I came here to let you go, right? He's like, that's how he got fired from his job. And I think people should literally be that matter of fact. I think you should sit down with your boss and you should say, I've decided to leave the company, right? And then just basically that, it's like, don't have to give a reason. You don't have to make them be defensive. If you're going to break up a relationship, you say, I've decided that I'm going to end our relationship. And people may look at this or hear this and say, wow, that is cold, or that's like, so matter of fact. There's no emotion involved in that. Don't people deserve more? And I would say, yes, if they request it as a follow up to that, if they're really like, I don't understand, da da da, leave it to you to decide if you want to share more. But just be prepared. The more you share, the more you're going to get defensiveness and could turn into an argument that won't serve your thing. So I think be matter of fact and kill the monster while it's little and hold off on the details unless you feel you want to go there.
One of my best friends lives by the phrase, reasons weaken you. And so she'd be 100% in agreement. Um, just say what's so, and that's it. And any reasons are just an invitation for an argument. And then there's all sorts of things that can come into play. Like I mentioned before, the softening of everything. Oh no, it's not that bad. It's all me. Or the response with anger. All that stuff can start to happen. Reasons weaken you. Just direct to the point. And all of this is made easier if you know that you're taking a stand based on your values. And that's it. If you've got that foundation that you're operating from, then you've got nothing to fear, and you know that you're doing what's right for yourself. You know what you're doing is actually going to benefit the other person or the company, and then you have an opportunity to open up the door to whatever the future holds. That's going to be in alignment with who you are.
And with that said, we're ending this podcast now.